Alright, we're going to do a two-part series on the digestive systems of animals. I'm going to break it down into two smaller videos instead of one really long one. And so, as we get into this first week, it is going to be imperative that we understand how our animals are built, because that is what directly influences how we're going to be feeding them. So it's important to also read the supporting chapter in the textbook, as well as going through the PowerPoint. Our first activity this week that we're going to be doing is going to be focusing on understanding the digestive system. So our objectives for these two videos on digestive systems is going to be define the classifications of the different systems, outline the basic functions of the different parts of each system, and define some key terms important in the physiology and studying the physiology of nutrition. First things first, we need to understand what digestion is. So when we define digestion, that is simply the breakdown of large molecules such as proteins, carbohydrates, etc., fiber, to smaller molecules in preparation for absorption. That's what digestion means from a nutrition standpoint. And when we consider that, we have actually 4 types of digestion. Those 4 types are mechanical, chemical, enzymatic, and microbial. Mechanical digestion, chewing, grinding, some of the processing that we do to help animals digest their feed. It's just simply the physical breakdown of a food particle. Chemical digestion, this is where we're talking more about like hydrochloric acid that's found in the stomach, bile that comes from the gallbladder that can help digest fats. Those types of chemicals that can be used in the body. Enzymatic digestion is the use of enzymes or catalysts that help reactions go faster to break down nutrients. Protein digestion is heavily enzymatic, those types of things. Microbial is the last type, and that's where the animal actually has bacteria, protozoa, or fungi to help digest and ferment food particles to break it down. Most animals have elements of all of these. Some species focus more heavily on 1 or 2 types than other species do. And that's what we're going to talk about. But just remember that there's 4 types of digestion: mechanical, chemical, enzymatic, and microbial. And that's what we're going to kind of visit about as we get into these different types of systems. In general, a simplistic way of classifying digestive systems is by 2 different methods: diet and anatomy. What do they eat and how are they built? In reality, we blend these 2 systems when we start classifying digestive systems to really get to how that animal can be fed. When we talk about diet, many of you guys have probably heard these terms before. Herbivore, consuming mostly plant material. Take a second, think to yourself, what is an example of an herbivore that's consuming plants? A carnivore, consuming mostly animal material, or a meat-based diet, and you can kind of take a second and try to think about animals that fit that category. The last one is an omnivore, an animal that consumes both plant and animal material. Because what we're going to do next is walk through different examples of these types of animals. And we'll see if you guys came up with the right ones. I'm betting you did. On the anatomy side, we have 3 sort of classifications that we use. And we have the non-ruminants, or what we also have called monogastric or simple stomach. They just have a single compartment stomach. And so we don't use the term non-ruminant as much because that implies a lower stature than the ruminant, which, you know, cows are cool. But we want to talk about that monogastric or simpler system that has a single stomach, compared to the ruminant, or even their pseudo-ruminants that have a more complex stomach structure that has multiple compartments. And in the avian anatomy, which is the birds, turkeys, and poultry from a commercial standpoint, but they have a very unique system as well. So let's take a look at some examples of how we utilize both the diet and the anatomy to describe an animal. If I was to say the term non-ruminant, herbivore, or omnivore, we would be talking about, as a farm animal example, the pig. Non-ruminant means a simple stomach, not a compartmentalized stomach. Omnivore means they can handle both plant and animal tissue types. And so for us, the non-ruminant omnivore, the best example we have is the pig. Humans are actually non-ruminant omnivores as well. We're built very similar to the pig. In contrast, we still have a non-ruminant, which means a simple stomach, but an example of a non-ruminant herbivore, meaning an animal that eats only plants. Horses are probably one of the more common examples, rabbits, guinea pigs, animals like that. We actually sometimes hear the term hindgut fermenter. And we'll show you why in the second video. That's sometimes what we refer to when we talk about horses and guinea pigs and stuff like that. If we talk about a non-ruminant carnivore, this is an animal that has a simple stomach as well, not a complex stomach, and eats mostly meat. And there's debate between the dogs, but the cat is considered a true carnivore. Dogs are evolved initially as a carnivore, but they do handle a more flexible diet than the cat does. So sometimes dogs are falling into that omnivore category, a little bit of both, but the cat is the true carnivore. Vicious little creatures. Then we have the ruminant herbivore. And all ruminants are herbivores, and that's what we're talking about: cattle, sheep, goats. You can give it into the wild game, bison, elk, deer, etc., caribou, all of those types of animals. They are considered a ruminant herbivore, which means they have a complex stomach with multiple compartments and do best on plant-based material. And finally, we have the avian species, which are unique to themselves, and that are things like the chicken, the turkey, guinea hens, and any other pheasants, all the bird species that you might come across and deal with. That gives us an introduction of using diet and anatomy to understand how animals are put together and give an introduction to whether they're a plant-based or animal-based type of a diet. In the next video, we're going to go into it a little bit more detail into the anatomy and how that affects what we feed them. So move on to the second part of this digestive systems video.